This week, it's one of my favorite segments. It's time for our quarterly Security Money Update. How is the Security Weekly 25 Index faring during the pandemic? In the Leadership and Communications section, tactical versus strategic, CISOs and boards narrow communication gap. 5 signs that point to a schism in cybersecurity. 96% of cybersecurity professionals are happy with their roles, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. With over half of enterprise security budgets going towards detection and response in 2020, the challenge is investing in solutions that can migrate and scale with your business. ExtraHop helps security teams spot threats up to 95% faster and respond 60% more efficiently in hybrid and multi-cloud environments with cloud-native network detection and response. Kick the tires in the full product demo at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. The most at-risk industries like financial, tech, and government agencies use web isolation to keep their networks and users secure. The Silo Web Isolation platform by Authenticate allows users to experience the web in full isolation, eliminating the chance of a web-borne cyber attack. You can interact with malicious files and websites without worry, even if you're working remotely. Authenticate enables anyone, anywhere, on any device to experience the web without risk. See how it works at securityweekly.com/authenticate. As a security leader, CyberArk for Teams was built to make your job easier. Are you struggling to measure your team's skills proficiency, provide critical or relevant role-based training, or translate training investments into meaningful business outcomes? CyberArk for Teams is the industry's #1 NIST-aligned DoD 8140 and 8570 compliant certification and skills training platform. 96% of the Fortune 500 have employees training on CyberArk. CyberArk for Teams. Skills development solved. Visit cyberark.it/solved to solve your training problems.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 192, recorded October 19th, 2020. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in Colorado, but not wearing my Broncos colors today out of respect. But joining me from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island are my Patriot co-host, Paul Astorian and Jason Elton.
What a kicker you have. That's about it.
Thanks, Matt. There was a football game? I don't know. Anyway, moving right along.
True story.
It's the only offense we have is that the kicker can usually get them through the uprights. That's it.
Six times.
Mm-hmm.
In our October 22nd technical training, we'll provide a first look at a new free resource that delivers thousands of remedies as a service to bridge the gap between vulnerabilities found and vulnerabilities fixed. On October 28th, learn how to build an integrated security platform in our webcast with Mimecast at 3 o'clock. Visit securityweekly.com/webcasts to see what we have coming up, or visit securityweekly.com/on-demand to view all of our previous recorded webcasts. Would you like to have all of your favorite Security Weekly content at your fingertips? Have a question for one of our illustrious, maybe not Patriots hosts, someone from Security Weekly team, or wish you could hang out with the Security Weekly crew and community? Subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher, sign up for our mailing list, and join our Discord server. To stay in the loop on all things Security Weekly, visit securityweekly.com/subscribe. All right, so I have to make some admissions. So I've been tracking the Security Weekly 25 Index. It's been almost over 2 years now. I started tracking data when I joined Security Weekly in November of 2018, but I went back to July of 2018. That's when Tenable went public, because they were one of the ones that I wanted in the index. And so I've been tracking this thing for over 2 years now. And I've had to make 4 changes in the index because 4 companies have gone private. Sophos, Forescout just went recently. Carbon Black was bought by VMware, and there was one other somewhere in the mix. And I realized this weekend when I was updating everything that every time there's a change, I have to recalculate the index so that the index is consistent and the weightings for the different companies calculate the index are correct. And I realized I had a couple bugs in my formula, so I fixed them all this weekend. So I had to go back and pull some of the historical data to make sure that the index was calculating correctly, because I caught it when I made the change for Forescout this week. So the new graphs have been updated. I dropped them into Discord. Paul, I still haven't figured out how to put them into PPWorks yet.
Yeah, that's a feeture request.
Yeah.
Submit the enhancement.
Yeah, now I have to do that. So what did we learn? Well, so Forescout did go private. The Advent deal went through in last quarter. And so I had to bring in a new company into the index. Sumo Logic went public. So I swapped the two of them. So Sumo Logic came in to replace Forescout in the index. So I'm still at 25.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's good. We didn't have to change the name.
The Security Weekly 24 index.
Right? Just doesn't sound the same.
Pardon the mathematical errors.
So now we just need to keep it that way. If you're going to go public, make sure someone else goes from public to private.
Right. Just kind of swap you in and out.
Yin yang.
But I'm telling you, man, it's a royal pain in the butt to recalculate everything and then make sure all your formulas are updated across 2 years of data sets. But I did it, so it's okay. So where is the index? The index closed at a record on Friday again. So this is the second quarter in a row, Jason. Paul wasn't on last quarters, but you were, and we closed at a record then. We just closed at another record on the index side.
It's absolutely amazing given where we're at. You know, I mean, it's one of those scenarios where I would not expect it during COVID, during a pandemic, during an economic shutdown, I guess you could kind of say.
Sorta.
Sorta. So
yeah, I mean,
this is incredible.
We hear the stories about budgets being cut, and cutting back, and resource issues, but yet the stats from these vendors, and we'll get into some of the kind of summary data, they're still going up. They're still beating revenue expectations. They're beating earnings expectations. The prices are going up, which means the index is going up. Even the NASDAQ, it didn't close at a record, but it's up 77.26% since I started the index back over 2 years ago. I mean, even the NASDAQ's going haywire.
I sit back and I question, did the pandemic force us to do some things that we may have not done? Lean out operations, right? Were we running fat? Were we running fat? Were companies running fat? And did it force us to start looking at operational efficiencies to get us through digital? We're talking about quote unquote digital transformation, right? But it forced a lot of organizations to go out there and fast track their technology projects. It really did, right? So I know just my organization ourselves, we really had to do a level of introspection and start looking at our operational efficiencies and pushing them faster than we normally would.
Which means you're making investments in technology.
That's it.
Yep.
Sounds like you're also making investments in some of the security technologies to protect that new technology. And all of these vendors, in some form or fashion, I mean, there's a couple that probably aren't benefiting as much as others. But look, some of them in this index are definitely benefiting from that, that kind of change in spend and direction.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So when I look at some of the just summary of earnings, right? Revenue beat by 2.97% on average. That's up. I think it was like 1.3% last quarter. So the revenue beats up there. The earnings beat surprise. It's 70% on average higher. That's amazing when you think about it. Yeah, it's crazy. The earnings beats are 70% higher across the board. Tenable turned a profit last quarter for the first time. Now, on an annual basis, it's still not profitable. But there's a lot of companies that were predicted to have negative earnings and actually had positive earnings last quarter, which is a good sign.
Yeah, again, I'll sit back and I'll say, did this situation that we're in force us to start making investments that we normally would have kind of kicked the can down the road, right? I really think it did, because just seeing some of our customer habits that we have, it started to kick projects in that they were scheduling out a year and a half. And now all of a sudden they're looking at technology investment because they're realizing, hey, wait a minute, while my remote workforce is totally disparate, right? We're not operating out of our brick and mortar facilities anymore. We really need to start investing in the technology, in the security side. But at the same time, now they're looking to divest in other places. They're looking to divest in the brick and mortar facilities, in their offices, right? And now they're saying, wait a minute, we can actually save operational money by investing in technology and getting rid of some of these legacy type items, like offices, physical offices themselves.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just a few ratings, right? So the average analyst rating is a stronger buy across the industry. That's up from last quarter. Best rated stocks, there's 3 of them, all rated the same. Tenable, Verint, and Rapid7. Verint and Rapid7 were rated the highest last quarter as well. Tenable gets added to that mix. So you see this really interesting thing. 2 of the 3 public vulnerability management companies are 2 of the highest rated stocks based on the financial analyst ratings, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Tenable being highly rated, because we didn't see that for quite some time.
No, not at all.
Because they weren't meeting their numbers. Basically, they weren't meeting their numbers, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they went public over 2 years ago. Like I said, I started the tracking of the prices at their IPO back in July of 2018. And through over 2 years, they hadn't turned a profit in any given quarter. This was the first quarter. And they're partially getting rewarded for that, I think, from the analysts in their ratings. Finally.
It's interesting. I wonder when we cover like the Enterprise Security Weekly News, we still kind of, and of course, I mean, no hard feelings. We obviously used to work at Tenable. We cover the industry very, very well, I think, right? And I don't see any like really big innovation coming out of Tenable. The fact that their numbers are up, meaning they're selling more of what they have, right? Rather than really being on the innovation side, where we've seen Qualys and Rapid7, maybe not so much innovation might be the wrong word for it, but diversification of their portfolios, right? Really having new services and products to be offered that's still within their wheelhouse, and their current customers are spending more, and they're attracting new customers because they have new products and services. So I see those 2 companies growing. Tenable seems to have the same set of products and services. Maybe they're just able to sell it better, right?
I think they are, because some of the... Just to kind of open it up here, we're a Tenable client, right? And what I'm noticing by talking to them is they're actually trying to expand it, because they're having conversations with MSPs now, and they're trying to put the focus into, let's make this a multi-tenant, like a true multi-tenant environment.
They're doubling down.
They're trying to
core.
go deeper and wider in their existing core. Is basically what I'm starting to see.
Yeah, and I think they also use the pandemic as a way to get their costs under control. I've seen a lot of changeover over there. I know when we had Richard Steinen on BSW, I think it was BSW, or we did a micro interview with him at the Virtual Hacker Summer Camp. He said, look, when I look at where employees are moving, they're losing employees, right? So they've also done a good job getting their costs under control, which I think is why you saw the shift from losing money to actually turning a profit last quarter.
Again, leveraging this to get operational efficiencies, right?
Yeah. Worst rated, same 3 companies as last time. Secureworks, Checkpoint, and NetScout. Slightly different order, but the same 3 companies.
Right. So question for me on Secureworks, right? Because I actually listened to their earnings. Well, not listen. I read the transcript of their earnings call. And the earnings call seemed like they were actually moving in the right direction and getting better. I think they had, their profit margin was more than they've ever recorded. I think, it almost looked like they were on an upswing. So just question as to why they're still on the worst side.
I think it's the way. So I agree with you. Their numbers actually performed really well. The profitability was way up. I think it was like 1,600% or something like. It was crazy.
It was crazy.
And the revenues are tracking. I think it has to do a little bit with the model. Remember, managed security service companies that are public also have a high cost structure to them because they have lots of resources under the covers.
It's people. Lots of people.
They measure the number of new customers. Is that in the analyst reports and things like that? Like number
Some of them are.
Net new business, right? Isn't that? Yeah. I just think that if I were to look at Secureworks, again, more from like the enterprise security side, not so much the stock side, I would say that they're struggling to gain new customers because there's other players in the market that are more kind of the niche players, right? That could be more attractive and making it more difficult for Secureworks to gain net new business when you've got other players. Yeah. We just did a Corey from Deep Watch is coming on talking about he's not going to talk about the market, but when we know Corey, we talked a little bit about the market, right? And what I see is based on what Corey described Deepwatch as an example, they're more niche kind of players, right? Where you're going to do your MDR, we're going to do a really good job of it, and we're going to have a differentiator in the market, and that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to do it much better than some of the larger ones where you may get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, from a, let's call it a customer satisfaction perspective, I always knew there were issues with Secureworks, right? I mean, I hear it from our customers. I heard
all the big MSPs,
right? Exactly.
Yeah. And again, it's a high cost model. So probably some financial analysts just don't like the model where you take a pure play software company like a Qualys, even a Tenable that doesn't have a lot of services in the mix. There's not much to dilute the product side of the business because you don't have a lot of services under the cover. I think it's more of the model than anything else for them.
No, that makes sense.
Let's see. Best performers, Sailpoint again. They've just continued to outperform expectations. I love the space, as everybody knows, on the identity side. Varonis outperformed this quarter, which is good. They've kind of been a little laggard in the past.
And I'll say they're one of those examples of operational efficiency and changing their pricing model. Right? Varonis changed their pricing model because, again, to be transparent, I'm a Varonis client, right? We use that within our organization, and they really did a good job of changing their pricing model. Because it was complicated. Their licensing was complicated and expensive, and honestly, they're shifting. So I'm proud to see them on here.
That's good. Worst performers: Splunk, then NetScout. Now Splunk missed on the revenue side. They did fine on the earnings side, but this is one of the rare misses for Splunk since they've been public. It was an interesting view because I was like, wait, I mean Splunk, they missed? I mean, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So, and maybe part of it is because of some of the on-prem and the adjustments in the model a little bit, maybe. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see going forward. Do we see more misses out of Splunk, or was just a blip?
Right. I mean, is it also there's competition in the market?
There is. There's a bunch of newer players.
Yep, exactly.
They're all coming after Splunk's pricing model.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, every analyst I talk to, the biggest concern they have with Splunk is that drop in revenue because people think it's expensive. Are they starting to lose some share to some of the newer players, really addressing the data and the cost
That's
side
it.
of this?
And we're going to talk about that in, I think, in a bit.
I mean, there's no secret there either, though. I mean, that's been fully out in the open for some time.
But this is the first time you've actually seen it play out in their earnings report.
Right.
Yeah. Sumo Logic goes public. Successful IPO. September 27th. They opened at 22. They priced it at 22. They closed the day at 26.88. It's like a 22% increase. They put their market cap over $2 billion, which qualified them for the index. So they replaced Forescout, who came out of the model. Also, Palantir. Palantir had this really interesting debut on the market. It wasn't officially an IPO. They just started trading on the market. They debuted at $9.50 a share on the last day of the quarter on September 30th. They've got like a $15 billion market cap with that price.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to the Sumo Logic one, I mean, I was very surprised there wasn't a little bit more news about it, but then I went back and I looked at it, and the day before, Snowflake launched their IPO. And I mean, if you know anything about Snowflake, they're coming in and they're bulldozing. The CEO was the CEO of ServiceNow. He came in, and I mean, he's really going in there and bulldozing the market. So that's why I think we didn't see as much noise.
What does Snowflake do again? I've heard of them. I haven't looked at them.
It's a data lake. But they're getting into the security side too.
Yeah, I have a good my fraternity brother who I graduated with at Case works for them in their security team, and he was asking me some questions about, here's what we're thinking about and some other stuff. So it's interesting. I didn't realize they went public the day before.
It was like the day before, a couple of days before, something like that. But because I figured I'd hear a lot more noise on that, but Snowflake IPO went. But I mean, again, there's a lot of competition. You have Datadog, you have New Relic, you have all these other companies out there. Snowflake getting in the game, right? So a lot of competition in the space.
Yeah. And it looks like McAfee is planning for an IPO in Q4. So they announced they filed for an IPO. I didn't see a timeline for it yet, but my guess is it could hit in Q4.
Yeah.
Security Weekly 26 coming soon.
round and round we go, though.
I think it's interesting to see that, right?
Endpoint players in and out. But this is McAfee's second time.
That's it, yeah.
IPO.
But wasn't the last one like $7 billion or something crazy like that? It was like a massive number, I think. What was it, 2011?
Yeah, and then they got bought by Intel.
Mm-hmm.
They were part of Intel for a while, then spun out a separate entity, and now they're looking to go back into the market.
Right,
so
right.
that'll be an interesting one.
Really interesting.
And I looked at expectations. They're looking at they could raise as much as $814 million out of this one.
Interesting to see what they do with it and how they propel growth. Being labeled as the traditional antivirus vendor.
Right.
How do you stay competitive in today's endpoint market?
Yeah. Well, and they had some interesting capability. They bought Nitro, right? They had the MVM product, which is the McAfee Vulnerability Manager, the old Foundstone product. When they spun back out, they killed MVM. I think they still have Nitro. So they've tried to move away from just the endpoint, Paul.
Yeah, because there was EPO was like a whole management framework, right? That I never really used it. I kind of just talked to some people that were using it. Enterprise Policy Orchestrator or something like that, right? Wasn't that EPO McAfee thing, right?
Yep. Yeah. I still think that, EPO I still think is one of their big differentiators.
I think so too, yeah.
But as you look at what's happened to the endpoint market, they've got to do more than just EPO and antivirus to survive.
100%.
I did pull a bunch of private funding. There's some big ones in here. I mean, SNCC, a former sponsor, raised $200 million last quarter. That's a big number.
Yep.
Auth0 raised $120 million. Tanium raised $100 million, and then followed that just like a week or so ago with another couple $100 million.
Right.
I mean, Tanium's raises are just crazy.
Yeah.
Perimeter 81 had $40 million.
Right.
So that, some good raises in here. I mean, people are still making investments in the market, which I think is good.
Yeah, and I think Perimeter 81 is kind of jumping on that whole SASE, Gartner fire that's going on right now.
They are.
And it's one of those things where I look back and, SASE technically has criteria to become a SASE provider. And one thing I couldn't find on Perimeter 81 is one of the things you have to have is that global distribution. I couldn't find anything on their website about global distribution, like POPs all over the world. I didn't see anything. So it'd be interesting to dig a little bit deeper there.
I can ask them. I'm doing a webinar with them.
Are you? Yeah.
Coming up. I mean, the team is super solid over there at Perimeter 81.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they know their stuff. So
yeah, I mean, again, when I start looking at these providers, I start looking at all the criteria that it takes to become that, that secure access service edge qualified vendor. And I'd love to learn more about their global distribution. No doubt about it.
We will get that opportunity soon. Couple large acquisitions. Signal Sciences, sponsor for this show, been a long-time sponsor. For the network. They've been a long-time sponsor, Paul. That Fastly acquisition, $775 million. That's just a huge acquisition.
One of the larger ones in our industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Right? See numbers get above 500 million. You're in a list, a short list, basically, right? Because, Duo at 2.35 billion, to me, I believe, is one of the largest. McAfee might have been slightly larger than that. But you also probably have to factor in the time at which they were acquired, right? Because getting acquired 10 years ago isn't the same as today. Right. So that'd be an interesting study for you, Matt, the top 5 acquisitions in security.
Yeah, in our space. Yeah.
But take into account the timing, right?
That's it.
Yeah. Crypsis Group by Palo Alto was $265 million. SaltStack, also a former sponsor, acquired by VMware. Delve Labs, acquired by Secureworks. A few, and then a couple smaller ones. OPAC by Fortinet, Undefined Labs by Datadog, and Integris by OneTrust, kind of round out some of the big acquisitions last quarter. But there's still activity in the space. And I think, as we talked about it at the opening, right? How do you fare in a pandemic? Well, if you're hitting all-time high prices, you're outperforming on revenue and earnings, investments still coming in, acquisitions are still happening. Those are all positive signs for the industry.
Still a healthy market.
Agreed.
For sure.
Yes.
Well, and probably growing, too. I think it's slightly understated I mean, we're still on a fast track for growth in all these companies. When you just look at the stock performance, the funding raises, and the acquisitions, like this is a really active, very healthy market. And I mean, my prediction is it continues to grow this way for the foreseeable future, because as we use more technology, we need security coupled along with it.
Yes, we do. Well, we're going to cover the other side of security on the news side with some articles here in a second. So we're going to take a quick break and then cover those leadership and communications articles for this week.